Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. Now, I often get comments on this segment where people ask me, Brian, you sound different than usual. Are you sick? Are you sleepy? Are you fighting something off? And the answer is, my kids are asleep in the very next room, so I try and stay a little quiet so I don't wake them up or disturb them. But in this week's case, I'm sleepy as shit. I want to get this over with. Raw begins with a brand new graphics package, which I appreciated. They have everything top to bottom is different, like the stuff on the main stage, the LED posts on the turnbuckles, the lower thirds, the matchup graphics and stuff. Everything is different. Everything is revamped and updated. I like that look. They've had that gritty industrial look where it looks like the factory that only produces sparks and fire and the Raw logo. They've had that pretty much since 1995 or 6 on a very consistent basis for a very long time, some variation of that. So for them to finally break away from the sparks and the explosions and stuff, I think it's kind of nice that they finally did that now. They didn't show an opening intro for Raw on this night, but I do want to see what they do with that in the future. Also, something new, something old is new again. The coach, Jonathan Coachman, is back on the announce team. He replaced Booker T. Of course, he left ESPN late last year, and so now he's back here with WWE, where he first got his big break. And I think even at times when he was with ESPN, he kind of felt like he was still trying to work for WWE. At that time, he was kind of stooging for the company for a lot of times. I do enjoy Coach's work when he was doing play-by-play. Should be interesting to see what he's going to be like as the third man, because usually when he was doing commentary the first time around, he was like the lead guy when on Heat or whatever, but now he's like the third man instead of being the lead guy like Michael Cole is now. I thought he did okay for his first night back. He was definitely more subdued than what I was used to hearing him do when he was first with the company. So we'll see how he gets more into his role as the weeks go on. Stephanie McMahon opens up Raw. She introduces the winner of the historic Women's Rumble match, Asuka. She tells Asuka, you might want to wait to decide which champion you want to go after, because at Elimination Chamber, we're having the first ever Women's Chamber match for the Raw Women's title, which I'm actually excited to see. I'm curious to see what they do with that. Asuka then cuts a promo in Japanese and in English. Sasha Banks interrupts and lays down a challenge to Asuka. She wants to end the unbeaten streak of Asuka. Stephanie makes the match for later in the night, and that's the end of the segment. One of the big negatives I had for this show, and it's one of the few negatives I had for this show actually, was just the fact that the lack of appearance of Ronda Rousey live at the show. For all the hype and all the talk that moment at the end of the Rumble generated, to have this huge mainstream star coming in and pretty much declaring she's full-time with the company now, and you don't have, and they've showed the package a couple of times, showing all the headlines online and everything about Ronda Rousey's in WWE now, and they don't follow that up with a live appearance from her to kind of get some of that hype leading into some ratings for the show. I think that was very weird. I'm not saying it should have happened in this segment, because once again it would have kind of taken away from Asuka's moment of having been the first Women's Rumble winner, like I mentioned at the end of my Rumble pay-per-view review. But to have her kick off the second hour or something, do something to follow up with this huge thing that got everybody talking. I saw people online talk about how at their day jobs people were coming up to them, like wrestling fans, say, oh, Ronda Rousey, da-da-da. People were talking about Ronda Rousey coming to WWE. That's a big deal. So it just seems silly that they wouldn't capitalize on that with something live on Monday. We have 3 Elimination Chamber qualifying matches booked for the night, including this first one here, Last Man Standing, Braun Strowman versus Kane. And I have to say, this is probably the first and only time I've ever seen a Last Man Standing match end in a squash, because Braun and Kane are fighting on the outside. They make their way to the announce table on the floor in front of the platform. Braun dumps Kane out in front of the platform, looks at the platform, kind of surveys the situation, says, yeah, this will work. And then he just picks it up and just dumps the platform over on top of Kane and presumes dead. The referee calls the match off, and then they see Kane is motionless there. They put him on the stretcher and they wheel him off. And I love this tweet I saw either later that night or the next day, where it says Kane crawled his way out of the medical facility. It was never heard from again. So it's is this them killing off the Kane character? I can't imagine this is the last time we'll ever see this character. I'm sure we'll see him sometime in the future, but not for a while. If anything, this was kind of like the end of Kane as we know him for the time being. So, because I've seen Kane go through a lot worse shit than that. That platform landing on him was relatively tame compared to this one clip they even showed on Raw 25 where Shane McMahon rigged the limo to zoom off and crash into a semi-truck with Kane still inside. That was pretty brutal compared to what we saw with the stage thing. Still very impressive, but still, Kane seems to be gone for now. And it wasn't much you could say about the match. It's just the wild moment of Braun, upending the platform. And then they had the rest of the announce team go over to ringside. They had to construct a table as the show was going on so then it could do it. Like, they never thought to like just put the platform back down. It was just like up there, upended the rest of the night as some monument to Braun's destruction, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And maybe it's some excuse for them to go ringside permanently from here on out. I don't know. That's the rumor that I heard, but who knows? We'll find out next week. I love this moment backstage where Kurt is like confronting Braun, like, how many times do I have to go through this conversation? Stop killing people. It's like he was like the same kind of tone and inflection to Braun, like, you gotta stop violating your parking privileges, man. Our second qualifying match for the Chamber is Matt Hardy versus Eliason. Good Lord, that Matt Hardy limp. Is he okay? What is the condition of his knee? Every time you see him wrestle, like every week, it gets worse and worse. I'm afraid he's gonna be hopping on one foot by next week. It's getting that bad. The coach brings up an excellent point in this matchup because that you fight for the chance to go into this barbaric elimination chamber match, and then in that match you fight in this horrible environment to challenge Brock Lesnar. It's like getting it progressively worse. Like you finally had this like ultimate end boss after you pretty much like killed yourself getting there. They really just build that rough journey up come WrestleMania time. Like whoever challenges Brock Lesnar, probably Roman Reigns, is saying, you know, they've been through this and this and this to finally get here. Like if they don't emphasize that, it will seem kind of hollow. Anyway, Matt is distracted by the Bray Wyatt noise. Elias hits, first of all, Elias hits a huge boot on Matt Hardy, then the drift away to win the match. I think it's really cool to see Elias in this position. Like he's not going to win the chamber match, but the fact that he's going to be in there with 5 other presumably big dudes, like it's going to be kind of good for his image and makes him look good. Then after the match, Bray Wyatt shows up on the screen, and while Matt Hardy is selling, and Bray has a very, very hearty laugh. Up next, a rematch of the IC title as The Miz defends against Roman Reigns. Of course, The Miz beat Reigns last week at Raw 25 to win his 8th IC title. And by the way, The Miz's tights look extra sparkly tonight. Very good match here between these two guys. Again, I don't have anything bad to say about these two when they're working each other. Both guys working the leg in this matchup. Miz tries the shenanigans from last week where he undoes the turnbuckle pad again, which is how he won last week, but the referee catches him in the act. The Miz Taraj are chased off early on by Reigns, but they do make their way back out into the match as it's going on. The referee very lenient to them being in the ring at all. Roman takes out the Miz Taraj fairly easy, but then the Miz rolls him up and grabs the tights, grabs the tactical pants to win the match and retain the championship. Really good work here by both. I have no complaints. The Revival takes on Rhino and the MVP of the men's Rumble match from Sunday, Heath Slater. Pretty academic match here. The Revival wins with the Shatter Machine on Rhino. Then they cut a promo in the ring after the fact, and then they say, you know, they study the past while the fans keep living in it. How can you complain about the fans living in the past when you are literally a throwback gimmick? They announced that Dudley Boyz are the next inductees for the Hall of Fame this year, which is an amazing choice, a total slam dunk. Obviously one of the most dominant decorated tag teams of all time. They've won gold everywhere. WWE, ECW, TNA, but let's not talk about that. They even won gold in places they didn't actually work in, like they were the WCW tag team champions when WCW was absorbed by WWE. So yeah, definitely deserving of that accolade, so congratulations to them. We get Asuka taking on Sasha Banks next. The first time I believe these two have fought one-on-one on the main roster. Of course, the big story about this match is the fact that, you know, every week it seems that Sasha Banks is always coming up with new, creative, and innovative ways to almost kill herself in the ring. It's really just an art form. She has it down to a science because, you know, she's going for a suicide dive, and as she's going out, her waist like hits the middle rope, so she like snags, and while that's going on, Asuka kicks her in the face, and she takes this horrific looking face plant on the outside, like pretty much like planting herself, spiking herself on the ground. It looked very scary. I thought she might have just been dead right then and there. Somehow she survives that, gets into the ring, and then takes another flurry of attacks from Asuka. Asuka, about a minute or two later, gets her own nasty spill to the outside, but that one had control of it because you can see she grabs the rope for an anchor, then she like takes her bump on the apron, then does a backflip out. Like there's a difference between taking like really scary, horrific like bumps where you just kind of hope and pray it works. Then there's ones where you do those crazy looking, sick looking bumps that have control to it, and you know what your body is doing. Anyway, at the end of the match, Sasha has her the bank statement. It's countered into an Asuka lock, not an armbar this time. She does put the armbar in there at one point, but Sasha gets out of it. So she finishes with the Asuka lock. It's the first time we've seen that move used in months, it feels like. Sasha taps, Asuka wins again. Great match, heightened by the fact that like both women at times looked like they died in the ring. Raw tag titles on the lineup next as the Bar, the newly crowned 4-time tag team champions, take on Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil. Of course, Apollo and Titus beat the Bar a couple of weeks in a row in the build to the Royal Rumble, so this is finally them getting their shot at the tag belts. And I will say, Titus has looked better in these last 4 or 5 weeks than he has in the previous 7 years of his time in the company. It's amazing what this push seems to have done for him. At one point near the end, Cesaro launches Apollo into the air for a Sheamus powerbomb. I don't know if they're supposed to counter into a Hurricane Rana or what. But either way, it's like another gnarly bump. 2 matches in a row, and we have 2 just like sick looking bumps that these guys are just like almost killing themselves, somehow surviving. Apollo just gets right back up, and they do it to the finish. Cesaro and Sheamus take down Cruz with their double team finisher, which still doesn't have a name as far as I know, and they retain the belts. Impressive outing here, but man, like you see this happening more and more now, where guys are just taking these scary ass bumps. It's getting to the point where it's like, are they working themselves too hard? Is it just a byproduct of the style? Are they just getting tired? Like what would you do to like to try and like scale that back a bit and just not have them like almost killing themselves on these ridiculous spots that are ridiculous to begin with? Main event time is Finn Balor and John Cena, the final qualifying match for the Elimination Chamber on this night. I'm kind of surprised these two are fighting here in a qualifying match, because you would think this Elimination Chamber match would be big enough for the two of them, but unfortunately one of them has to go tonight. I will say I did enjoy the social media promos that they had here on Raw, like Finn Balor cut a promo, John Cena cut a promo, and you know, I saw people complaining about those the last couple of nights on Raw and SmackDown, and I will get to the SmackDown ones in a bit, but this one I actually did enjoy. I think it's like, it just shakes things up a bit and changes it from the monotonous, traditional, poorly blocked backstage interviews where the guy says something, they walk away, and the interviewer just stands there like this for 5 seconds before they cross this off to the next thing. So I'm glad that they're kind of changing things up a little bit. It changes the formula a bit, and I enjoy that. Very solid match here. This not only goes back to the Rumble on Sunday when Cena eliminated Balor, but also even further back to Survivor Series when Balor eliminated Cena from the men's Survivor Series matchup with a coup de grace. So this is going back quite a ways. So something very interesting is happening out in the crowd that we don't get to see, but it's definitely diverting attention away from what's going on in the ring, because you hear these big cheers and boos apropos of nothing going on in the ring. And so like, who knows what's going on? A beach ball, perhaps? I'm sure people know what's going on out there. Anyway, John Cena is visibly distraught by those reactions and stuff. Like for the whole rest of the match, he's just kind of like has a pouty face about it. He's like, I'm just trying to go to WrestleMania. Like, okay, like why put on this kind of poo-poo face about it? It seems like he was doing it to the point where it was almost like predetermined he was going to act like that, which I thought was like, but that doesn't seem right. Why would you plan that? It was still a good match though. He does win at the end with a super AA from the second rope. Again, great match. Don't know where Finn Balor's going to go after this, because if he's not in the Chamber match, like what place do they have for him in the Chamber pay-per-view and then going into WrestleMania? I'm very curious about that. SmackDown begins with the men's Rumble winner, Shinsuke Nakamura, who comes out and for the second week in a row puts over the phrase, knee to the face, I smell t-shirt. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn interrupt, and they air their grievances about the controversial finish to last night's title match, or Sunday's title match, I should say, even though, you know, they themselves didn't help the matter because Kevin got in the ring knowing he wasn't the legal man, but I digress. AJ Styles comes out to even the odds. He suggests that he and Shinsuke team up to take on Sami and Kevin, but the baddies say no. But in the next backstage segment, a couple of big things happen. First, Daniel, predictably, makes that match for later in the night, but he also makes a match for next week, pitting Kevin and Sami against each other one-on-one. The winner will face Styles for the championship at Fastlane in March. So, mooey intrigue. Fatal 4-way to determine who's going to face Bobby Roode next week on SmackDown for the US Championship. It's Kofi Kingston, Zack Ryder, Jinder Mahal, and Rusev. I do enjoy the fact that they're kind of tinkering with the idea. They're experimenting with like New Day members doing singles themed stuff, like not in tag team environments anymore. They're kind of like doing this thing where, you know, Xavier Woods was in the tournament for the US Championship earlier. Now Kofi's in this like 4-way match. Like, when's Big E gonna get his chance? I'm curious. All the extemporary people on the outside, Xavier, Big E, and Aiden English and Samir Singh, are all thrown out of the match before the break. The match ends this really cool finish where Kofi is like trying to do a roll up on Rusev, but he just like blocks it and hits him in the accolade for Kofi to tap. Rusev is going to be facing Bobby Roode next week, which of course coincidentally falls on Rusev Day. We go to a rather lackluster fashion files where we see Breezango and the Ascension working on the social media stuff for the company for the day. I do like the fact that the Ascension are wearing reading glasses. That's a very nice touch, whoever's idea was that. Benjables comes in, they challenge Breezango to a match that night, and then they also dump the table with all the laptops on it, which hopefully those were dummy laptops, because that would have pissed me off if my laptop got dumped off the table. We then go to an Usos promo. They come out to the ring and they run down all their opponents they've beaten so far, and every time they say lockdown, you see this graphic of this like cell door like on them, which was kind of like, that got annoying after a while. It is a very passionate promo about overcoming struggles, like your occasional DWI arrest, you know, no big deal. And then when they're done with that promo, the Bludgeon Brothers come out and they have kind of like a cross paths, they stare at each other, then the Bludgeon Brothers like do their, you know, their match against a couple of local jobbers, that's it. I was kind of expecting the Bludgeon Brothers to beat up the Usos after that and be done with it. Like, you know, why not start an Usos Bludgeon Brothers program now? Because who else did the Usos fight in the meantime until they finally fight? So I mentioned on Raw how refreshing I thought the selfie promos were. I thought that was kind of a nice change of pace from the norm. But then we go overboard here on SmackDown because they have the selfie promos, but then they like add all these words like slapped on, like to match up what they're saying. Like, do you think our attention span's really that bad? I thought that was kind of annoying. So the graphics aside, though, I did enjoy the promos that Rusev and Rude had for their match next week. They're very short, like 30-second promos. I just love Aiden English popping up from the background with a spotlight to sing about Rusev, and then Bobby Roode using the calendar to spell glorious. The promos themselves were good, but the little graphics popping up, and like the beginning and ending graphics for Rusev and Rude especially, where that's frozen on them and their names on the side, Rusev Day, Bobby Roode, like that was just super awkward. That was like template in Adobe Premiere bad. The SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte's being interviewed by Renee Beetlejuice in the ring to talk about the Women's Rumble match. Out come the Riot Squad to interrupt, and Ruby Riott keeps comparing Charlotte to her father. Then the three beat down Charlotte. She's selling for a while. Then all of a sudden Carmella comes in. Like, oh, she's gonna cash in the briefcase. That'd be kind of a cool moment to become like the new champion here. But it's kind of a fake out because like as the referee is like talking to Greg Hamilton, Carmella accidentally drop kicks. She goes for Charlotte, but she accidentally drop kicks the referee out of the ring. So he spills out ass over tea kettle. He's selling, and Charlotte gets back up and puts the fear in Carmella, and she just runs off. So no cash in, kind of a fake out. It was pretty entertaining fake out. And at this point, though, I said before, and I'll say it again, I've totally given up trying to guess when Carmella cashes in. I'm just going to sit back and let it happen. My body is ready. We then have a match between Baron Corbin and Ty Dillinger. Not much to say about it. Two guys who are grumpy about what happened to them at the Rumble on Sunday. Corbin does win with the end of days, so there you go. Up next, Benjables versus Breezango. It's essentially a squash match designed for Chad and Shelton to get their heat back after losing on Sunday to the Usos in the 2 out of 3 falls match. A couple of moments where like Breeze is continually knocked off the apron in this match by Chad and Shelton here. It ends when Breeze does get the hot tag in, but he's taken out with Benjables' double team move for them to win the match. And what the hell's the deal with like tag teams on Raw and SmackDown having double team finishers and not giving them names? Main event time, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn take on Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles. Of course, the big story in this match and the overarching story for the whole show is that growing dissension between Kevin and Sami, knowing they'll be fighting each other next week for the #1 contendership for Fastlane. You see it in their locker room conversation before the match and how kind of like tense everything is, and they're kind of like standoffish. Then the match itself, like there's some miscommunications, there's some yelling, there's some threatening to leave and everything, and so that's definitely palpable here. It's so interesting because in the course of a week, they seem to have totally transferred all the cattiness going on between Shane and Daniel Bryan and has totally transferred it over to Kevin and Sami. I don't know if that was intentional or if they just didn't want to overdo it on both sides. Have they abandoned the Shane and Daniel conflict, or is this taking a break for now, pumping the brakes, and they're just like saying, well, fuck it, we're just gonna have Kevin and Sami turn on each other now. Like, who really knows for sure at this point? But I did think that was very noticeable when I was watching the show. Styles shoves Kevin into Sami off the apron. Sami storms off because, hey, he's got a match of the Mixed Match Challenge in a few minutes, so he's got to get his win back. Kevin is taken out with the Kinshasa, so AJ and Shinsuke win the match. Backstage, Sami says that this is not the end of his friendship with Kevin. He wants this opportunity. He wants to beat Kevin, and then he wants to beat AJ Styles and go to WrestleMania as a champion. So is this truly the end of KO and Sami? We will see. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. This week, I have to go with Raw. In my opinion, Raw just killed it this week, won by a landslide, because unlike last week on Raw 25, which had an over-reliance on nostalgia for cheap pop's sake, and they couldn't find that balance between a nostalgia show and the pay-per-view go-home show, Raw this week I think was much more focused. They had better matches. They had, just as much wild shit as last week, but it was more about the current here and now. Very symbolic to see Braun Strowman basically kill off Kane, essentially. The Braun destruction was great. The Miz Reigns was a good match. Asuka Sasha was a good match. The Raw tag title match exceeded my expectations, and Cena and Balor was also good as well. The only thing I didn't like about Raw on Monday was the fact they didn't capitalize on this huge momentum they gained with Ronda Rousey on Sunday by not having her show up on Monday. That was a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion. SmackDown, I thought, well, shit, what did I like about SmackDown this week? I was watching, I'm like, nothing's really blown me away. Like, the Fatal 4-Way was cool. Good to see Kofi in that kind of setting, and Rusev's always fun to watch. The cash-in fake out was humorous, but besides that, nothing really did it for me on SmackDown. And I think that the lame graphics work was just kind of a huge turnoff. Like, the more we saw it, it was like, getting kind of ridiculous. I hope they do not continue doing that. The selfie promos themselves, I don't mind. Because, again, I like, for reasons I mentioned, shake things up. It's not the backstage promo with the interviewer standing there like an idiot. But you've got, the graphics I think was just too much. Kind of took away from me in that one. So yeah, Raw wins big this week. SmackDown, I feel this time around, was just kind of spinning their wheels because, Fastlane's not until March They have a longer time to go for that one, so nothing is set in stone. So the booking, I think, was definitely impacted by that for sure. And hopefully next week's SmackDown is looking to be good, because not only do you have Rude and Rusev for the U.S. title, but you also have Zayn and Owens, so there's a great potential for SmackDown next week. Let me know what you thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and don't forget to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive content and bonus perks. I'm Brian Zayn, and I'll see you next time.